Today, from the global lane, the October 7th massacre 1 year later. The truth exposed about what happened that tragic day. The story of one Israeli who lost his life after rescuing his friends.
He was a brave young man. He was beautiful inside and outside. They found my son with a bullet in his head.
And the French-Israeli filmmaker given unprecedented access to October 7th crime scene video.
I saw videos that even in the worst horror films made by Hollywood, even they're putting the images off.
Depression, fear, anxiety rising. America's mental health crisis. George Barna explains how the lack of a biblical worldview is causing people to lose hope and purpose.
If you feel like you have no purpose in life, why would you get out of bed in the morning?
And it's all right here on the Global Lane. On October 7, 2023, Israeli Ron Shemer, along with several of his friends, attended the Nova Music Festival. Instead of fleeing to safety when Hamas terrorists opened fire on the concertgoers, Ron ran back into danger to rescue his friends. He never made it out alive. His mother, Sigal, joins us to share the memory of her son. Also with us is Naomi Nussbaum of One Family. That's a charitable organization that is helping Sigal and other terror victims recover from tragedy. Sigal, first, our condolences to you and your family. I know this first anniversary of the October 7th massacre must be extremely difficult for you, so I can't imagine what you're going through, but we're glad you're here with us. Please share with us more about your son, Ron. What kind of man was he?
Wow. My son, Ron, he was my life, the light of my life. He was a brave young man. He was beautiful inside and outside. He traveled in all the world. He had a lot of friends. He loved animals. He loved the nature, the sea, and everywhere he went, he tried to keep it, and he all the time wanted to help people to find a cure for cancer or another diseases. He was a great young man with great dreams that he cannot reach them now.
He was only 23 when you lost him. I imagine you must be proud of him because he put others first, did he not? I'm sure that didn't surprise you. So he had a chance to flee in a friend's car, but he returned to the event to help others. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, they tried to convince him to come home. It's dangerous to stay there. But he said, no, I cannot go home. I'm going to find my friends. So he looking for them. It was maybe 10 minutes, and he found them. He took them. He was the driver. He took them to Gamma shelter, but the terrorists, didn't go inside. They dropped 3 grenades, and the terrorists get inside and kidnapped my son. He go up with them, he go out, and he was struggling with them. I know that because one of his friends that stayed in the shelter was hearing on fighting with the terrorists. So he thought that they took him to Gaza for 1 week. I knew that my son is kidnapped. Only after 1 week, the army and the police and other people came here and knocked at the door and told me that they found my son with a bullet in his head. I spoke with him at the phone that morning, and he told me, "Mommy, I'm coming home," but he didn't know about the monster that came into Israel. He thought it's only a bomb, like. Every Monday and Thursday, there are bombs here in Israel. It's not something new to us, the bombs, but the monster that get inside Israel that day and kidnapped and raped and murdered people, young children and old people, and you know, it's something that I cannot think about it.
Naomi, 1,200 people were killed on that day. 240 hostages were taken. Nearly 100 are still unaccounted for. I can't imagine the trauma that the family members have experienced, also the terror the surviving hostages went through. So, how is One Family helping them? What do you do?
One Family provides emotional support, financial support, and legal aid. Under the umbrella of emotional support, we have several tiers. We have traditional therapy with psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers, trauma-informed workers that you would expect for individual therapy, couples therapy, family therapy. And then really the heart of One Family is our the social groups, the social support. We have support groups for all the different categories of people so that they can meet other victims in similar situations to themselves and really truly feel deeply seen and heard and understood in a way that nobody else could possibly do for them. We provide the grief and trauma counseling that they need to get through the darkest hour. And then we provide more and more and more. We do everything with open arms. We try to infuse love and joy and gifts. We give them food and babysitting or hugs or whatever they need. And they make friends within this therapeutic context where they're learning the tools of resilience. And those friendships really get them through their darkest hour.
Well, what do you tell those who have suffered loss from terror if they blame God, if they become bitter and unforgiving? How do you help them overcome that?
Some people are angry and some people are bitter and some people's faith is actually strengthened. So it's not one size fits all. The PTSD and the grief is going to affect everyone differently. One Family creates safe space where they're allowed to and encouraged to share the entire range of emotions that they're feeling. They should feel angry and bitter if they want to feel angry and bitter. And we teach them resilience, right? How to cope with that hole in their heart that will never fully close, ever, but also to try to rejoin life again. Live for the living family members, live for yourself, find a little bit of joy, even though we can never change what happened.
And finally, Sigal, what do you want people to know about October 7th and your son that they may not understand now 1 year later?
Okay, I want people in the world to know that my son didn't go to fight. He didn't go to the army. He was he's not a soldier. He went to a festival music. And the monster come and kill them and butch them and rape them and kidnap them and burn them, and a lot of horror was there for innocent people. Today is in Israel, tomorrow is in America.
Okay, Sigal Shemer, thank you. May God bring you comfort and peace at this time. And Naomi Nussbaum, thank you and One Family for helping people overcome tragedy and loss. And may God be with both of you. The October 7th terrorist attack in Israel was the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. It led to war and the loss of thousands of lives in Gaza, and now war against Hezbollah in Lebanon. 1 year after the Hamas terror bloodbath against Israel, its impact is still being felt, not only in the Middle East, but around the world. Joining us is French-Israeli award-winning filmmaker Pierre Rehov. His latest documentary out this week is called Pogroms. Pierre, bonjour, bienvenue, shalom. You've done a lot of films about Israel and the Middle East over the years, so as an Israeli, I'm sure this one was a bit more personal for you. Why did you feel compelled to do a film about October 7th?
Well, first of all, I live about 20 miles north of Gaza, and on October 7th at 6:30, I was woken up by, like everybody else in Israel, by sirens. I received a phone call at about 7 a.m. from a friend of mine who told me, lock your doors, lock your windows, we are invading. That's how I found out that something big was happening. And since then, we've been, where I live, under Hamas rocket for about 3 to 4 months before the IDF was capable of to stop the firing of rockets, at least in my specific region. But it took me a couple, 3 months to finally decide to make a film about it, because October 7 was a tragedy. It was a massacre. It was a pogrom. It was a kind of a genocide. But on October the 8th, the next day, instead of seeing people with a T-shirt in the street of New York or Los Angeles saying, "I am Israel, stop Hamas," no, they did exactly the opposite. And a lot of students in many universities around the planet and people in the streets started rioting, not on the side of Israel, but exactly on the opposite side, taking the side of the Hamas.
I have viewed the film. I must admit the graphic video and images and the testimonies of the first responders were difficult to bear. What impact did all of it have on you?
What you saw is not 0.5% of what I saw. And I selected among the images that I had to see the mildest. I watched and I saw videos that even in the worst horror films made by Hollywood, you wouldn't dare putting the images off. Because I met with many first responders. And, you know, in Israel, there is a high level of respect for the dead. So the government try as much as possible to not let those images of dead Israelis travel around the planet. So many, I would say 90% of them were censored, taken down from the social networks. But first of all, I got material from the army, and I got also material, I saw material from the cell phones of the first responders who filmed what they saw, who filmed what they discovered. And this is something that I don't even want to describe, but it got me a few nightmares. And even today, months after, I cannot still believe that things like that happen. It's like a nightmare written by Ted Bundy. And actually, we had like 6,000 Ted Bundys going inside Israel to massacre Jews.
Well, after detailing the October 7th massacre, you explore the ideology that led up to this horrific crime, the creation of Hamas as a military wing of the Muslim Brotherhood, funding and support from Iran and Qatar. But you also mentioned that no such thing as a Palestinian nation or people existed. A nationalist movement was actually triggered by global powers, and the Soviet Union was the first one. Tell us more about that.
Every historian who has been really looking in good faith at the events and at the history itself knows that the Palestinian people were invented by Yasser Arafat, Nasser, the president of Egypt, and the KGB in 1964. The reason for this invention at a period of time when people were not talking so much about Israel and the Arabs living in Palestine, who didn't call themselves Palestinians in those days because Palestine was only a region, never been a country, never been a kingdom, never been anything but a region. And the only thing which was in this place as an independent country throughout history was Judea, Samaria, the Kingdom of Israel, and now Israel itself. So in 1964, Nasser was having trouble with putting together all the Arab countries under his personal domination, and he wanted to give it another try. When Yasser Arafat came to him and said, Yasser Arafat, who was born in Egypt, has never been a Palestinian himself, and came up with this terrific idea: let's make the world turn against Israel. Palestinians never wanted a country. They had a plan to destroy Israel for ideological reasons, because a Muslim cannot accept that another Muslim would live under Jewish rule. Today, after October 7, after receiving thousands of rockets, after having had all those murders, those tortures, those rapes inside Israel, and having now the Hezbollah and Iran attacking us for such a long time, Israel said enough.
The film is Pogroms. Where can people view it, Pierre?
Oh, it's going to be out on October 7th for Remembrance Day. First, I'm going to give it for free to everybody on Rumble for 24 hours, just to to commemorate October 7th. And then it's going to be on Apple TV, it's going to be on Amazon and Tubi TV and a lot of networks similar to those. Amazon being one of the biggest.
Okay, we can find it just about everywhere. Pierre Rehoff, merci beaucoup. Tuda Rabah, thank you for being with us. Shana Tova.
Thank you very much.
Do you often experience anxiety, depression, or fear? Instead of spending hundreds or even thousands of dollars annually on prescription drugs and mental health treatment, maybe you should consider adopting a more reliable and proven worldview. Well, joining us is Cultural Research Center Director of Research, George Barna. Dr. Barna has spent more than 3 decades studying worldview, and his recent research findings indicate the consequences of harmful worldview beliefs that may result in potentially debilitating mental health misdiagnoses. George, I was shocked to see that 56% of Generation Z report experiencing regular bouts of anxiety, depression, fear. How does their worldview affect their mental health?
Well, Gary, when you look at it, there's a very significant connection between the fact that here you've got a majority of that generation who says that they often are struggling with anxiety, depression, crippling bouts of fear, even suicidal thoughts, a tendency toward addictions, and only 1% of them have a biblical worldview. In fact, if we look at things generationally, we find that with each succeeding generation, the incidence of biblical worldview has declined. But at the same time that that's declined, the incidence of feeling overcome by anxiety, depression, and fear has risen. So there's definitely a connection between these two things. Your worldview, which one you embrace, whether you embrace a biblical worldview or another worldview, whether it be syncretism, postmodernism, Eastern mysticism, Marxism, whatever it would be, and how you're able to deal with the world.
Okay, baby boomers, I guess, then would have a more biblical worldview or in greater numbers. So our worldview can give us purpose and meaning in life. What did you find there?
Yeah, with baby boomers, as opposed to their succeeding generations, 14% of boomers said that they regularly struggle with anxiety, depression, fear. Now, that 14% is the lowest of the 4 adult generations, but they also have the highest proportion of biblical worldview. It's not high, it's only 8%, but that's 8 times what you find among Gen Z. It's 4 times what you find among millennials. It's double what you would find among Gen X. And so you can see that there's a clear pattern that happens.
And George, how about purpose in life? I mean, what difference does it make?
Well, you know, Gary, it's interesting. If you feel like you have no purpose in life, why would you get out of bed in the morning? You know, doesn't it make sense that you would say, yeah, I have all kinds of anxiety. I don't know who I'm supposed to be. I don't know how I'm supposed to act. I don't know where I'm supposed to go. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know why I even get out of bed. And so that naturally raises your sense of anxiety. It naturally would give you deeper depression because you look at other people who are enjoying life, other people who are making a difference in the world, and you look at yourself and you say, I'm not one of them. That raises your propensity for depression. Things like fear. You don't know who to interact with, how to interact with them, what you can hope for in the future, what you need to be afraid of. All of that raises that kind of sense of fear that life is coming after you. Life is going to get you. So, yeah, I mean, all of these kinds of worldview issues, which the Bible speaks to so clearly, are definitely tied to a person's mental health.
And I know you and I believe that God is the only one who can give us that purpose. He created us for a purpose. Perhaps serving others, serving Him is that. So I know we have a big election coming up next month. How is a person's mental health related to their political ideology?
Part of the issue that we see is that people aren't thinking clearly about the issues. We elect a president as a chief executive, one who's supposed to address those kind of issues. And so you need to think very clearly about who's going to do the job, what is the nature of that job, what kind of job do I want them to do. And yet we find that in this very important election, making these critical decisions that are going to affect the future of America and the future of our lives individually, we're trusting our emotions rather than we're trusting intellect and empirical data. And that's a recipe for disaster.
And what a difference worldview can make for our country, right?
Absolutely. If people were willing to turn to their worldview, a biblical worldview, they could turn to a base of empirical, proven reality and facts and guidance for our lives. That's what the Bible provides for us because God wants us to succeed. And so he gave us those guidelines. But when we reject those in favor of how we're feeling at the moment, not remembering that, our feelings constantly change based on conditions and situations, well, that's something that's going to lead us astray.
Professor George Barna, Director for Research at Arizona Christian University's Cultural Research Center. Always enlightening talking with you, George. Thank you so much for sharing your time and insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary.
This week in the United Kingdom, the Court of Appeal heard the case of a Christian school assistant fired from her job for sharing anti-transgender views on Facebook. In October 2018, Christy Higgs expressed concern that her child's Church of England school was planning to introduce a series of books to students such as My Princess Boy and 10,000 Dresses. She encouraged people to sign a petition opposing government plans to mandate materials in schools that advocate gender confusion among students. She posted a second time, sharing an article about the rise of transgender ideology in children's books. A Facebook friend complained to the school about Higgs's post, describing her as homophobic and transphobic. Higgs was suspended and eventually dismissed. She says the school discriminated against her for sharing her Christian beliefs.
I was just sharing my concerns of what's coming into the schools and what was coming into my son's school.
Folks, this is a grave miscarriage of justice. The appeal court needs to resolve this matter quickly. More than 5 years have transpired since the Facebook posts. The court needs to order Christy reinstated to her job with back pay. Free nations must not allow the firing of people for sharing their religious views online, no matter who may be offended. Higgs was not hateful. She only expressed her Christian views. She says in both the UK and the United States, parents are now more aware of what students are learning. So like Christy Higgs, let's resist false teaching and be fearless in speaking biblical truth despite the consequences. Well, that's it today from the Global Lane. Until next time, be blessed.